All right, welcome back for another deep dive.
It's great to be back.
So today we're heading to the U.S. Senate,
Yeah.
February 2025.
Okay.
And senators are in the middle of this marathon voting session,
Uh-huh.
all over President Trump's proposed budget.
Yes.
And to really ground us in this moment, we have this amazing picture of the Capitol building at night.
Yeah, just lit up against the night sky. It's pretty striking.
Yeah, and it really does kind of bring home the fact that this is more than just procedural votes.
Right. This is a pretty high stakes battle.
Yeah.
It could have some pretty significant consequences.
Well, and I was looking through this CNN article,
Okay.
and one thing that really kind of jumped out at me
Yeah.
was this thing called a votorama.
Oh, yeah.
What is that all about?
So imagine this flurry of amendment proposals,
Uh-huh.
one after another,
Okay.
and senators having to vote on each one. And it can go on for hours, even stretching into like the early morning.
Wow.
And so the goal is to basically wear down the opposition,
Oh, okay.
expose their vulnerabilities, and force them to take tough stances.
So this is it's exhausting,
It is.
but it's also strategically complex.
Very much so.
So what's at the heart of this particular budget battle?
Well, Senate Republicans, they're trying to push through President Trump's budget,
Uh-huh.
which, as you might expect, it emphasizes his, full America First agenda.
Okay.
But there's a catch.
Oh, there's always a catch in Washington.
Indeed. Not all Republicans are on board with every aspect of the budget.
Okay.
Plus, there's a competing plan from the House Republicans.
Yeah.
That's even more ambitious in scope.
Okay, so that's got to create some tension.
It does. It's creating real tension within the party.
It sounds like they're trying to walk a tightrope.
Yeah.
Keep President Trump happy, maintain party unity, and come up with a budget that actually works. Right. So what is in these budgets?
Yeah.
What should our listener be paying attention to?
Well, President Trump's budget, it focuses heavily on increasing funds for immigration enforcement,
Okay.
bolstering national security,
Okay.
and boosting domestic energy production.
Okay.
It's a more targeted approach
Yeah.
compared to the House plan,
Okay.
which seems to be aiming for a broader sweep of legislative priorities.
Okay.
Although, we don't have all the specifics yet on that House plan.
Okay, so two different visions.
Yeah.
Both coming from Republicans.
Yes.
But you said that President Trump was putting a lot of pressure on the Senate Republicans to get his budget passed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He's been very vocal about it,
Uh-huh.
framing this budget as a crucial part of his legacy.
Okay.
And that adds another layer of complexity to this whole situation.
How so?
Well, it raises the question
Yeah.
of how much influence a former president still holds
Oh, okay.
over his party, especially when he's publicly tying his name to specific policies.
Okay.
So are Senate Republicans voting based on what they truly believe is best?
Right.
Or are they trying to appease Trump and his supporters?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it really makes you wonder, how much of this budget battle is about actual policy?
Yeah.
And how much of it is about political maneuvering
Exactly.
and power dynamics?
Yeah. That's why the CNN article is so fascinating.
Yeah.
Because it gives us this glimpse behind the curtain,
Okay.
showing us how the political sausage gets made.
Yeah. Now, one specific example from the article that really caught my eye was this amendment proposed by Republican Senators Susan Collins and Josh Hawley.
Right.
They wanted to address rising food prices,
Uh-huh.
which, that's a concern for a lot of people,
Absolutely.
by cutting funding for single-family homes.
Yes. Their logic was to redirect those funds towards initiatives that could potentially stabilize food prices.
I'm no expert,
Yeah.
but that seems a little counterintuitive.
Uh-huh.
Cutting funding for housing to lower food costs?
It certainly raises questions.
Sure.
Was it a genuine attempt to address food insecurity?
Huh.
Or a politically motivated move
Okay.
designed to appeal to a certain segment of voters?
And the article says their amendment ultimately failed.
Right.
Why do you think that was?
Well, there could be several reasons. Perhaps their approach was seen as flawed or impractical,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe it faced opposition from other senators who had different priorities.
Or maybe, just maybe, there were other political calculations at play
Yeah.
that we're not privy to.
It's certainly possible. It highlights the fact that uh, even seemingly straightforward issues
Yeah.
can become tangled up in the web of political maneuvering.
It's like every decision.
Yeah,
Every vote is part of a larger chess game.
precisely.
Yeah.
And that's what makes this deep dive
Yeah.
so interesting. We're not just looking at individual moves, we're trying to understand the larger strategy at play.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And speaking of strategy, this brings us to another intriguing moment from the votorama.
Okay.
It involves an amendment proposed by Senator Dan Sullivan of Alaska.
Oh, yeah. The one that almost everyone voted for, but it still failed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, the CNN article doesn't really go into detail about what the amendment was actually about,
Okay.
but it does mention that it seemed to have like widespread bipartisan support.
Okay.
Almost every single senator was on board
Uh-huh.
until the very end.
Okay, I'm hooked. What happened?
Out of 100 senators, only 2 voted against it.
Wow.
And yet those 2 votes were enough to completely derail the amendment.
Wow, talk about a power move.
Right.
It makes you wonder, like, what was going through those 2 senators' minds?
Yeah.
Were they making a principled stand?
Right.
Or was this like a calculated strategy to flex their political muscle?
It's hard to say for sure without knowing, more about the content of the amendment
Right.
and the senator's motivations,
Uh-huh.
but it does highlight something really important.
What's that?
In a closely divided Senate, every single vote carries enormous weight.
Yeah.
It shows how even a small group of senators can wield significant influence,
Right.
potentially blocking legislation,
Uh-huh.
even if it has broad support.
That's a sobering thought.
Yeah.
It makes you realize how much power rests in the hands of a few individuals.
Right.
And it also makes me appreciate the strategic brilliance of using a votorama.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
By forcing senators to vote on so many amendments,
Uh-huh.
it can expose those hidden cracks in alliances,
Okay.
push people to take stances that they might not otherwise take,
Right.
and potentially lead to some very unexpected outcomes.
So we've got competing budget plans,
Yeah.
former president trying to exert influence, and senators wielding power in unexpected ways.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like a recipe for political chaos.
It certainly makes for a captivating drama, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And it reminds us that politics isn't just a spectator sport.
You're right. This budget battle will have real-world consequences for everyone.
Absolutely.
And, it strikes me that while we've been talking about grand political strategies and power plays,
Yeah.
we haven't really touched on how all of this connects to the everyday lives of our listeners.
That's a crucial point.
Yeah.
Budgets aren't just abstract numbers.
Right.
They determine how our tax dollars are spent, what programs get funded, and ultimately how our government functions.
Okay, so let's break it down.
Yeah.
What are some specific ways that this budget battle could impact people listening right now?
Well, for one thing, it could impact their wallets.
Okay.
Tax cuts are often a popular component of budget proposals.
Mm-hmm.
And while they might sound appealing at first glance, they can have long-term consequences,
Right.
potentially exacerbating existing economic disparities.
And what about social programs?
Right.
I know a lot of people rely on government assistance for things like healthcare, education, and food security.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This budget battle will determine funding levels for those programs.
Mm-hmm.
And remember that amendment proposed by Senators Collins and Hawley
Yeah.
aimed at addressing rising food costs.
Right.
It's significant that neither the Senate nor the House budget explicitly addresses that issue.
So even though food prices are a major concern for many Americans,
Yeah.
they're not really at the forefront of these budget negotiations.
It would seem that way. It makes you wonder what the real priorities are here.
It's almost like there's a disconnect
Yeah.
between the issues that matter most to ordinary people
Right.
and the political maneuvering happening in Washington.
That's a perception many people share, unfortunately. And it underscores the importance of staying informed and engaged.
Because ultimately, these decisions made in the halls of Congress have a ripple effect
Yeah.
that reaches all corners of the country.
Yeah.
It can feel overwhelming to keep up with all of this.
Yeah.
I get it.
Uh-huh.
But like you said, it's our responsibility to stay informed.
Right.
Where do we even start?
Well, this deep dive is a pretty good starting point.
Okay.
We're breaking down complex issues
Mm-hmm.
and hopefully helping you connect the dots between these political battles
Right.
and your own life.
Right. So let's get back to the heart of this budget battle.
Okay.
We've got two competing plans from the Republicans,
Yeah.
one for the Senate, one
Hmm.
from the House.
Right.
Remind us again, what are the key differences?
So the Senate's proposal is more focused,
Okay.
prioritizing immigration enforcement, national security, and energy.
Okay.
It's like a laser pointer, you know,
Mhm.
aiming at specific areas. The House plan, on the other hand, is more like a floodlight,
Right.
trying to illuminate a wider range of issues.
Interesting analogy.
Yeah.
So, given these different approaches, what are some of the potential outcomes here?
Yeah.
What should we be watching for as this budget battle unfolds?
Well, one key question is whether Senate Republicans can manage to stay united,
Okay.
especially with President Trump looming in the background,
Mm.
and applying pressure.
Yeah.
Will they stick to their narrower budget,
Uh-huh.
or will they be forced to make concessions to the House
Okay.
and potentially embrace a more expansive agenda?
And what about the Democrats?
Right.
What role are they playing in all of this?
Well, they're in the minority in both the Senate and the House.
Right.
So their power is limited,
Right.
but they can still use their voices to raise concerns,
Okay.
offer alternative proposals,
Right.
and try to sway public opinion.
It sounds like this is just the first act.
Yeah.
In a much longer play,
Right.
this budget battle is going to have a ripple effect on the entire political landscape,
Absolutely.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The outcome of this battle could shape the direction of President Trump's influence,
So,
impact the balance of power between the House and the Senate, and set the stage for future legislative battles.
so after this deep dive, what's the one key takeaway you hope our listener will remember?
I think the most important thing to remember is that politics is not a spectator sport.
Mm-hmm.
These decisions made in Washington have very real consequences for everyone.
Right.
Staying informed,
Yeah.
understanding the issues,
Uh-huh.
and engaging in the process is crucial.
Oh.
Whether it's through voting, contacting your representatives,
Okay.
or simply having informed discussions with friends and family.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah,
Well, thank you for taking the time to unpack all of this with us.
my pleasure.
Always happy to dive deep.
Happy to be here.
And to our listener, we hope this deep dive has given you a better understanding of the high-stakes budget battle unfolding in Washington.
Uh-huh.
Stay curious, stay engaged, and remember that your voice matters.
It does.
Thanks for joining us.